happy to introduce a case study session on how virtualization rules in a pandemic. And so with that, I welcome to the studio Adam Lee, Creative Director of nxtedition, and Peter Zanchetta, CTO at TV2 Nord. Peter,
hi.
Adam, thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate it. Adam, that's a real nifty background you have going on back there. Super cool.
Yeah, if you're going to make TV for products, you better make TV.
Absolutely. So that actually is a really great opening into the first question that we have today. So Adam, I know this is going to be difficult because nxtedition has a lot that you offer, but if you could give us a 30-second elevator pitch of exactly what it is nxtedition does and specifically who you are to your customers, I think that will be very interesting.
So nxtedition is a production system that takes care of planning, script writing, wire services, the MAM, the PAM, the search, the prompters, the ingest record, the gallery automation, the channel playout, the social media. We can do radio, we do artificial intelligence, subtitling, we can do the graphics, and we can do streaming in and out, etc., etc. We're adding things all the time. So it's a complete solution to manage complexity, which is what we're going to talk about.
Awesome. And then just kind of a follow-up to that for our viewers to understand, where does your platform end and the end user's facility begin? Where's the demarcation point?
So there's a term that knocks around called glass to glass that I'm not particularly fond of. I think only Sony and Panasonic can claim glass to glass because they make lenses and TVs. So, you know, we have a standard studio sitting here with cameras and lighting and stuff like that. That's all down to the customer to have for their setup. We use a standard audio mixer and a standard vision mixer. That's mostly because of legacy, because people already have equipment that they've got invested in that they want to integrate. So we can let the client choose which product they want to use there. And then from that point onwards, we take care of pretty much everything up until we go to delivery. So, you know, which CDN, or, you know, if you're sending it to the continuity playout tower over terrestrial or whatever. But everything between those two steps we take care of.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adam. So Peter, handing it over to you for a second, I want to give context to the rest of this discussion. So I'd like to understand for TV2 Nord, what was initially the dream when you were looking to overhaul your channel at the Salto station? What was the dream that you were looking to put forth? What was the goal that you were trying to achieve?
So the dream was to make a media house, not a television station. So a place where we can deliver content to any platform we want without having lots of silos, technological silos that we have to implement or use strange APIs to hook up to each other. And we found that nxtedition were able to do almost an end-to-end product, so that we only have a few things that we are actually integrating to today, which makes it really easy to manage. And since it's a common platform for everyone, it's also really easy for the employees to expand their knowledge and work on content for different platforms as well.
So as you were assessing this, and you were assessing your build your own model versus outsourcing to nxtedition, what were the factors that you took into consideration? And in this process, do you feel that there were any trade-offs for outsourcing your operations, or outsourcing your infrastructure, I should say?
There's always things you have to cut when you want to deliver everything and put everything in one basket. But there's a lot. The trade-offs kind of is weighed off against what we gain in productivity and everything else. And we were at a point where we're actually trying to get rid of some of our old infrastructure, because the other thing is that if you already have hugely expensive servers and all that infrastructure in place with a different payoff schedule so that you can't throw everything out at once. We were lucky that we actually had the opportunity to say, okay, we can put everything in one basket. So we are end to end from editing. We push stuff in from editing, and everything until we push it out into the world is done within nxtedition today.
And have you seen a cultural shift in the way that you operate, or what your team is able to create and put on air now that you have outsourced the technological overhead?
Yeah, definitely. Because today we don't. Of course, we still have experts doing online stuff and experts doing flow stuff, but they kind of mingle and share information, and we can put an employee into the online world one day and have them doing stuff for the flow channel the next day, because it's all within the same work, within the same interface, and there's common knowledge. So it's become a question of whether or not you know what works on online platforms and compared to what works on a flow or television platform, which is in some cases completely different. So instead of having to teach them a lot about the technology of publishing to Facebook or to then we just have to teach them what the content needs to be in order to work on a specific platform.
Absolutely. So that kind of then what you're describing, workflows and the nuance of workflow. I'm also in media workflow, and I always say media workflow is 70% psychology, 30% technology. And so that leads me back to Adam. How is it that nxtedition accounts for these nuances in your design and operational approach when you're designing for a facility like TV2 Nord?
Well, maybe the best thing to give you a bit of the backstory. I mean, we used to be a systems integrator, and we got very frustrated with lots of different equipment and tying it together and using protocols and APIs and how fragile that whole ecosphere was. So we decided that we would just, and we started with the automation about 7 years ago now. And what we decided to do was the way to manage complexity is to basically consolidate things. So the more you can consolidate, the less of these weaknesses that you could have in the system, these sort of APIs or these protocols between different boxes. One box gets updated on the software and it breaks the link to the other box, and you get into that kind of world. So we consolidated as much as we could, and we took a microservices approach to physical kit. How much of this stuff can we run as microservices? And we found out we could run a hell of a lot of this stuff. And the great thing about that is that these microservices, they're elastic. So we have transcodes, for instance, in the system, and they're elastic. You can spin up more transcodes if you want, and they'll spin down when they're not needed. It's the same with the prompters. If we fire up more prompters, you spin up more instances of the prompter. And then how do you deal with the risk? Because the risk, we manage that with private cloud. So we're running this on our own servers. It's in the building. And I think when you're talking about managing complexity and risk, you should also add, how do you manage security? And part of that is this private cloud solution. Of course, technically speaking, we're actually a hybrid cloud solution. So we can spin up transcode instances in the cloud if we need to put the pressure on the system. We can pull up more storage on S3 buckets if we need to. So we're able to be agile in that respect, that we can scale in the cloud. But fundamentally, where Peter's data is in his building. And he's not reliant on his internet connection, because if anything happens, if someone digs the cable up outside, he can still get the evening news show out. No problem at all. The system still works. He's got the same technology at his fingertips, but it's just in his building, in his racks. And may I add, it's one rack.
Wow. Well, microservices will do that. So I mean, this collaboration between your two organizations, and that's really what it is. It's a partnership at its most fundamental. And so this is really a two-part question. First for Adam. First for Peter, what about nxtedition made you feel comfortable entering into a partnership of this magnitude, essentially handing over half your brainchild, for lack of a better term, for them to manage?
It was my smile, wasn't it, Peter?
Yeah, well, he's sitting right there. Oh, that's part of it. We are actually, as you say, it's a collaboration, and it works as a really fine collaboration. We are closely knitted, and if I have a problem, I can call someone, and they will actually help me. And if I want to do something new, or if I get a great idea tomorrow and I want something to work, I will have the ability to contact nxtedition. They will scope it. I will pay them the sum of money, and it will be done tomorrow as well. So that's one of the advantages of this, because all my crazy ideas are not getting on a wish list somewhere and waiting for 10 other customers to be to get the same idea. We are evolving this system together, and I hope it brings nxtedition as much knowledge or benefit as the partnership does for us.
And actually,
Peter,
to follow that
when I hear you describe this, you really are living the dream. I mean, you really are living in an agile environment. I think in the way that we all hope to as an industry, and it's a really great story that you and nxtedition can tell together. Adam, I think you had something else you wanted to add to what Peter was saying.
Yeah, I think the partnership, we have that same partnership with all of our clients. So even including down in Switzerland, and I think it's interesting to point out when we talk about agility and having an agile technology platform. When we did the installation at Express and at the beginning of this pandemic, we shipped them the servers. They put them in the racks. They turned them on, connected them to the network. We deployed all the software onto the servers remotely. I trained them remotely. There wasn't a single person from nxtedition that walked into that studio gallery and they went on air, and we handheld that all remotely as well. So, as an organization, we're actually set up to be agile. We have really good support. We have a really good ticketing system that allows our customers to make suggestions. We take the suggestions very seriously. We work very closely with our customers, including Peter, and because they have the best ideas, right? I mean, we can sit here and think all the time, but it's people like Peter and our other clients that come up with the best ideas, and we implement them into Next, and then they go into the next version, and everybody gets updated. And we have things, the streaming things, for instance, like that's about to come online. Is all going that way as well.
But I have another point. Can I just have another point? Because the way of doing this actually takes a bit of courage. It's a leap of faith into this, because we have to believe in each other, and we have to make sure that we can trust each other, because it's such a big part of our production. If nxtedition dies, I will be able to put a camera with a microphone on it, and that will kind of be it. I might be able to rustle up an old server somewhere and dust it off and play something out, but that's pretty much it at our station. So we put all our eggs in one basket, and of course that's a risk, but the benefits are just worth it, I have to say.
Yeah. So this is going to go to actually both of you, but I'm going to start with Adam. For customers who are thinking about moving to a hosted service model for production, what advice would you give them as part of their initial evaluation process?
It's hard because it's about education. I think you mentioned that in the last session as well. I mean, the technologies that we're talking about are, all driven by the same processors and hard drives. I mean, the difference here is really between the development teams. It's a war between development teams, in my opinion. And we got a great development team. But as we scale things up, and as people look at this stuff, they don't really know what they're looking at. A lot of the time, you get people scratching heads. We've come up with a great demo that sort of demos everything in a way that everyone's laughing and they go, wow. And the thing we hear at the end of our demos a lot is, that's just amazing. That's what people say all the time. It should be our tagline. It's amazing. Because we're slicing things off the ingest machine and posting them to Instagram in a split second. I mean, we can get from an on-air clip coming through the ingest channel to Instagram in less than 30 seconds if you want, or the system can do it automatically if you want it to. You push a button here on the shop box and it's on Instagram. The last, goes back 30 seconds and puts that on Instagram. I'm not sure if you can fit 30 seconds on Instagram. It's a minute. Right? So we have to educate people that these technologies exist, and to consolidate in the way we've consolidated is tricky, because in the environment there are some people that do one part of what we do. So there's people who do social media, there's people who do prompting, there's people who do automation, there's people who do MAM, there's people who do PAM, there's people who do NRCS. So people, even when you get into a virtualized world, we're going to have all these containers in the cloud from different manufacturers who are going to have APIs between them. So we just replicate what's on the ground up in the sky. We've got the same problems actually in a lot of ways. There'll have to be a standard protocol for these containers to talk to each other, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a process of education. We took as Peter says, he took a leap of faith. We took a huge leap of faith 7 years ago when we started coding in JavaScript, because no one was coding in JavaScript and everybody laughed at us because we were going to code in JavaScript. But our lead developer, Robert Nodge, is just a genius, and he coded up the Casper CG system, and we've implemented that, and we run that actually as an open source project. We converted it to HTML graphics, so now that will accept, for instance, things like Singular Live. So we've got a partnership with Singular Live. When we plug Singular Live into our graphics machines, it just worked, and you're like, well, there's an integration for you. We don't have to do anything, so it's solid. We're partnering up with people who have the same technologies as us, where we have weaknesses and where we have strengths. We're trying to educate the clients that, like Peter, just be brave, because the benefits of this are enormous. The productivity increases are enormous. The cost savings are also enormous. It's insane, the difference it makes when you consolidate.
So you brought up a very good point in that conversation, which is that you guys took a leap of faith. You're constantly evolving your platform. And then Peter obviously echoed that in the fact that he's constantly evolving his instance with you. So how do you train? And this is, I guess, for Peter first, considering it's your staff. How do you train for an MVP environment if there's no manual, or the manual is evergreen? It's continuously changing and evolving.
So we started up this, and every employee at the station, when we started this, had a 2-day session by a couple of super users who had a week of training from Adam, and that was it. And every employee in the company had the same 2-day training, and then we went on air. And as we evolve, we push out videos to the system. So there's a small group of super users that every time we implement something new, we make a small video and push it to the system and send out an email. Look at this. And this is how easy it is to operate, because all the new features are looking a little bit similar to what we used to have. So if you know how to do a subclip from an ingest, you know how to trim it as well as how to trim any video in the system. And that's the part that makes this easy to use for anyone. So from engineers until the engineers had a couple of days more, but that was it. But they also know how to operate the system as operators. They don't know how to write a voiceover or edit a story, but they know how to operate it, because it's the same training that we roll out to everyone.
So you put this into practice about 3 years ago now, which means it was in practice. Your facility was completely transformed and being run by nxtedition during COVID. How did COVID affect the way TV2 operated?
Yeah, but we actually started another channel during the pandemic. So all the training for the 24-hour channel before, 3 years ago, we put in nxtedition in the news department and did all the news. And in September last year, we transformed our 24-hour channel. And we did that with 5 online sessions in Teams of 2 hours. Because everyone knew how to create the content. The only thing they needed to know was how we're going to publish it in the new channel. So we had voluntary Teams sessions where employees could jump in. If they needed more training, they could take 2 sessions. They could take 3 sessions if they wanted. And that was kind of it. And I was sitting in this office back at home because I was not allowed to go into the facility. We had strict rules so that we would make sure that we were going to be able to produce every day. So that was the way we did it.
Well, Peter, Adam, I want to thank you both so much for your time today. I think this has been a really enlightening conversation. I think what you two were able to do as a partnership is a testament to where the industry can go. And I want to thank you both for just a really terrific session.